Joining us now, Congressman Paul, who is the philosophical leader of the Tea Party. And while I may disagree with virtually everything he says, Congressman Paul has the intellectual integrity to put his cards on the table, tell us exactly where he will cut the budget. And for that, he deserves a round of applause. Popular, though, or unpopular, though these ideas may be, Congressman, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
So first, just put it out there, you voted against the continuing resolution that was passed to the House of Representatives the other day to keep government functioning. Explain to us why you did not vote for it.
Well, mainly because it was still too big. I've never endorsed a budget since I've been in the Congress because I've always believed that the spending was out of control even 15, 20, 30 years ago. And so I'm not going to start voting for them. But on this particular bill, there were a few little cuts, but I thought they were token. But the one thing is that seems to be off the table is cutting anything militarily. You know, you can't touch or even think about the military-industrial complex. So if they start tinkering with that and start cutting back significantly with an earnest effort to cut back, I conceivably could vote for a budget, but these aren't real cuts. They're not serious about it. This is totally out of control, and I think you have to talk about the military spending as well.
We'll get there in 1 second. Let's see if you and I can agree on something. Even if you extend, in this continuing resolution, cut $4 billion over 2 weeks, and there is some notion that maybe you on your side of the aisle, Republicans, want $100 billion to be cut over the whole fiscal year. Even if you did that, can we agree that is barely a token given the magnitude of the federal deficit right now?
Absolutely. I mean, the deficit is 1.5 trillion. The national debt this year is going to go up $2 trillion. Okay. So it's very much out of control. I'm
trying to see if you and I, from opposite sides of the political spectrum here, can agree on certain things. Can we also agree that until you begin to make serious cuts, if you want to really balance the budget on defense spending, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, what I call the big four, you're not serious about this debate? Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I think so. I use different words. I don't cut defense, I cut military, and I don't like anybody to think that I'm cutting defense. I think our defense is diminished, and that's just a technical point. But I also would have priorities. You know, I think if they followed what I talk about, taking away all subsidies and getting rid of the Department of Agriculture and all these other things, you wouldn't necessarily have to start on medical care for the elderly. But everything should be on the table. Everything has to be considered.
Let me just push you a little bit on that. You and I both know what we call non-defense discretionary spending is about $600 billion. Right. Even if you eliminated all that, Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, all that, you're still left with a $1 trillion deficit. So you are going to have to do some serious cutting in defense and Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, just as a matter of arithmetic, right? So that we can agree on.
Yes, everything has to be cut. And I've made a proposal that we should do all our 13 appropriation bills, and if we're 20 or 30% over budget, just strike that amount from each one.
Okay,
and see what would happen. That would be another way of doing it, but that's not going to happen. In reality, they're not even going to think about things like that.
Okay, let me just let's take Medicare for a moment, which is health care for the elderly. We agree we need to cut it. How do you want to do it? Where are you going to control Medicare spending so that we can take, let's say, a 10% cut out of that budget, 15% cut out of that budget?
Well, fire the bureaucrats who run it and make a direct payment maybe to the states. I mean, there's so much cost to sending the money up here. We had a highway bill today, but, you know, why send the money up here and send it back and pay all the bureaucrats? Department of Education, same thing. So get rid of the bureaucrats. If you collected the money, you have the money, send it back and let the states run it. You could do something differently, but
Congressman, look, I'm going to hit the big red X on that one. I've been a governor. We ran a Medicaid system. We did it pretty well, but you're not going to save a lot of money by simply shifting the responsibility down to the states, getting rid of the bureaucrats. Are you willing to means test Medicare, by which I mean if your income is above $200,000, you got to pay for your own health care. You don't get a Medicare coverage. Are you willing to do something dramatic like that?
Well, yes, you could, but you would have to make an admission that if you did it with Social Security, you have to admit that's a welfare program then. I've had bills in where I've tried to salvage the Social Security system by stopping all the spending everywhere else and have a contract with the people and try to pay it. So like I said earlier, that's not where I start. I have a lot of places where I can cut where you don't have to concentrate and overemphasize, well, where are you going to cut the medical care for the elderly?
Look, I got one last question. question on what I call an Ezra Klein of the Washington Post. Give him credit. He had a great line. He said the federal government is really an insurance company with an army, and the insurance company is Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. You're going to have to do something dramatic in there. Give me one serious idea, and then I want to switch to another topic, one serious idea to really drill down and cut hundreds of billions of dollars out of those insurance programs.
Okay, I would do all the budget, all 13 budgets, and if you're 20% over the budget, cut everybody's by 20%.
So you're just going to lop 20% off Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Cut everybody's Social Security check by 20%.
That is one way you can do it.
Okay, well, are you for it, or are you saying that's one way you could do it?
Well, yes, if they offered that, if they did all the appropriations and found out that we were a certain percentage over the budget and wanted to do it, I mean, I'd be willing to do it over a 3-year period. Maybe you could do 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, so you don't have to do it all in 1 year.
All right.
It would just be the direction that would make the big difference.
All right, Congressman, look, that's why I said at the top, I may disagree with you, but I admire your intellectual integrity. You're going to be cutting our Social Security checks by 20, 30, 40%. It's going to balance the budget. Now, I want to change the debate for you for a minute.
Now, look, you put words into my mouth there, but I'll let it go.
All right, all right, we'll come back to that. I want to pose a philosophical question to you, because I think this really is where you and I do disagree. I've heard you say eloquently, although I disagree, that there is no right, let's say, to federal help with your education, or no right to have the federal government pay for your health care. Even if I accepted that premise and I said, you're right, there's no right to it, can't we as a society decide we want to provide that assistance? And over the last 50 years, we've all benefited by having a government that does it. No, just because it's a right doesn't mean we can't or shouldn't do it.
Okay, we don't have a right to it, but we want everybody to have it, so we should never challenge each other on our motivations. Because I don't agree with you, that does not mean that I care less about. I'm a physician, you know, I've seen this, but I've also practiced medicine before the government was involved. And believe me, I didn't see people out on the street without medical care. I worked in emergency rooms in church hospitals. I was paid $3 an hour, and everybody got taken care of. Nobody quizzed it.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
There is a way to do it, and I believe the market can do a much better job than the government. And right now, the government is proving my point, because the medical care in this country is going downhill, and it's getting more expensive, and it's getting worse rapidly.
Look, just so it's clear, I wasn't in any way challenging your motivation. I was just saying there's a distinction between having a right to something and then government or society collectively making the affirmative choice, even though there's no right to getting a Pell Grant or getting a subsidy if you're desperately poor to help pay your rent. We can decide to do it. So this is the motives.
I can accept that. I don't believe that you have a right to somebody else's life or money. And people don't have a right to these things. They have a right to their life and their liberty and the fruits of their labor. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be motivated. And I am motivated, but I would provide a better system that is provided through the market economy. Just think of what it would have been like if the government had decided to pass out computers and cell phones. Can you imagine what would have happened? Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone, and the price goes down.
But when the government gets
involved, when the government gets involved in education and medicine, you have quality goes down and cost goes up, and it becomes a bureaucratic monster, and people, everybody's unhappy. Everybody's unhappy, and then the corporations take over. The insurance companies take over.
Hold on one second.
And the drug companies take over.
Hold on 1 second. Look, there's a lot more in there we may agree with, but I want to ask you one last question. Clock's running out here. There may not be a right to a minimum wage. Do you believe that we should set a minimum wage, even though there may not be a constitutionally mandated right to it?
Yeah, the minimum wage is always set by productivity. And the more productive an individual is, the higher the salaries are. If you had a free market, there would be a demand for labor, and and wages would be pushed up. When we had the Industrial Revolution, I'll tell you what, wages went up rapidly compared to when there was, no industries at all. So, no, yes, there is a right, and they can demand that there should be negotiations, and there should. But the only thing that'll push up a real wage is real production. That's what we have to understand.
Look, Congress, look, long-term productivity is the key to wage increases. All of us who've studied economics agree with that. But I'm asking you a simple question. I don't mean to play prosecutor, but yes or no, because the clock's running out. Do you think the federal government should mandate a minimum wage that applies across all 50 states?
Oh, my goodness, no, that's slavery. I mean, that's tyranny.
All right.
I don't want mandates. I don't want mandates on your personal lifestyle, and I don't want you mandating my economic lifestyle. I don't want government mandates. I want them to protect my liberty, protect the market, give us honest money, and give us a national defense where we're not squandering our wealth by policing the world and trying to tell people how to run their lives.
Congressman, time is up. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope you'll come back. We'll continue this conversation because it's always good to get somebody as intellectually honest as you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, that was fun. Anyway, ahead on the show, what's the difference between hate speech in America and hate speech in France? The answer will surprise you.